And we're going to talk to be in business. And I've got Tracy here to talk about those things. And Tracy, I'm going to ask you about where people can find you. But I must admit, before I actually sat down and thought, what are the most skills? And I wrote, and it's exactly the same as your list.
Wow. Okay,
So,
that's
so
cool.
where can people find you?
So you can find me, well, everywhere we're streaming today, but you can really find me on at my website, which is tracywattscirino.com.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
you've got the .com.
Yeah, I own it, right? I own the name. And
Wow.
Cirino is a really simple name to spell. So just so it's Cirino.
Yeah, as on the screen.
Yeah, exactly. I just like laugh. Like that's always the part of my name that trips people up. So yep, it's tracycirino.com.
So Tracy, you've been in business for a number of years. Talk us through what you've been involved in, and we'll leave the 5 pointers for the moment, but just give us a brief overview, because people are interested in how people like you have got to where you are.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear about that journey. So tell us about it.
Well, as a business growth strategist, I have had the pleasure of, I guess you could go back as far as when I was 22, I became a six-figure earner. Then after that, I took those skills and grew a seven-figure business in the beauty and cosmetic space. Then became a five-time international best-selling author, turned coach, business strategist. I think my curiosity of why people do what they do and helping people think a different way, which is what is the sort of keys to success. I'm always curious and I'm always asking a lot of questions, which annoyed my parents, but surprisingly has done me really well in business.
My partner asks questions all the time, and it's like having a child with you all the time. Why did it? Why is this? And in fact, in the end, you go, yeah, why is this and why is that? And
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting because I just am naturally curious about why we do what we do. So that leads to our first point, right? The 5 months. So it's like communication. You know, communication leads to so much in business where people maybe walk away from the deal just because they got one no. Well, statistics show you've got to ask 12 times. So there's a disconnect in that piece of communication. Or if someone says no, it just means not right now. It's not no to you. So that communication is a lot about not taking things personally. And early on, I think I took things really personal and there was a lot of tears, but you grow through it and then you try something different. So I
I
just
think you
think
have to disconnect
it's
yourself, because I mean, the thing is, as an entrepreneur, what's
yeah.
happening is it's your business, so it's kind of like, and if someone says your baby is ugly, you take it personally. Whereas you do have to make that distinction. But I agree with you, communication, and it's not just about well, if you think about the sales process, we have to have a conversation
Yeah.
that requires us, and communication is about listening as much as talking, and asking for things. So sometimes you do have to say, well, come on, are we going to do something here, or shall I just get a contract drawn up?
Yeah. In that in itself for new entrepreneurs and new like that is a point that we have to spend a lot of time on communication because if you don't ask for the sale, how do you know they didn't want it?
Hmm.
Where sometimes it's like, oh, they didn't want it. Well, they didn't know you were selling them something. So that's an interesting thing where I think oftentimes people will assume that someone doesn't want something just because they didn't automatically say, oh, I want that. But no matter what you're selling, statistics show that less than 3% of people are shopping for what you need. So,
Hmm.
from a communication standpoint, you have to be asking for people to even know you're available.
Yeah, and I think that the communication is it's not just about selling, is it? It's also about explaining to it may be about explaining to investors about what you're doing, the old pitch and the pitch deck, or explaining to your new employees about the vision and having that story that people can buy into. It all requires you to be able to communicate, and this is not about introverts and extroverts, because I'm an introvert.
And I am too. I'm a situational extrovert. Like,
Okay, is
I
that
just
okay? Is that what you? Okay, but I'm an introvert, but
yeah,
I know that I have to get around it. But
yeah,
at the end of the day, if you said, "Do you want to go to the bar, or do you want to go back to your hotel room to read a book?" I'll go back to my hotel room to read a book because that's where I get my energy from.
same.
But
I'm
this
same.
Thursday, I'm speaking at a conference.
Yeah. So what will you do after you speak? Will you have to spend time?
Oh, by the time I get home, I will be absolutely exhausted.
Yeah. See,
Absolutely.
so that brings up the next point, right? Which is number 2 is like leadership skills, right? So the hardest person you're ever going to lead is yourself, right? But knowing, just like what you said, knowing that you need some downtime, then you're able to enter into a situation leading yourself in the right way. Therefore, then you're leading others. Where we just talked about communication, and oftentimes when we are hiring a new team or doing a new initiative within our business, when we lead people and take them on the journey with us, which is through that communication, we have to speak in the language that lands with them. So, oftentimes, as a leader, even though I am an introvert, technically, I've had to learn where I call situational extrovert, where I need to apply that. But I still have to be smart and take care of myself. So, I think that's how leadership first starts with you. And I always say, but even though you're the hardest to lead, it gets easier from there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, leadership also for me is sometimes about prioritizing what I do. What's the most, lots of things are coming up me certainly this week. And it's okay, what's the priority? And what do I drop?
Yeah.
And what do I focus on? But also leadership is also about making sure that the team understands which direction we're going in, um, and making sure that they know what they need to do. I'm very lucky. I have a team that kind of do, they kind of do what. Well, I'm trying to think. They do things without being told to. They
Right.
seem to be able to second guess, which I'm very lucky about.
Well, that speaks to your leadership, Tim. Like you've created a strong vision. You're probably driving home the mission and vision of your business. That's how it all becomes in alignment. Therefore, when we do those things all the time, it's much easier to prioritize, right? Then is because what happens when you start getting successful is it's which opportunity. When you look at life like, oh, there's all these opportunities, which one first? That is about leading ourselves through what our highest vision is.
Mm.
When we're really clear, then it's, makes it a little easier to say no to things because something else is better and it's more in line with your true vision.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very modest about any leadership skills that I have. I reckon it comes from the team, but having that ability to, um, if you micromanage people, then what happens is that they switch off and they just expect you to give them orders, and I don't have time for that. Um, and I think that's the mistake that quite often people make is that they think if I'm going to watch you all the time, therefore, and I'm going to tell you what to do, you'll get the most from them. You'll get the least from them.
Yeah, that's so true. Um, and that is definitely something that happens, I think, to a lot of leaders early on. They're insecure, like they're given a title, but how do I live up to that? And I have a little piece of value for
Yeah.
anybody that's going through that. Um, if you say, hey, I want to make sure that I'm communicating effectively, can you repeat that back to me? That allows people to take ownership where you don't have to micromanage and you can ensure that your communication was received by the person that need because you can clear it up right there. And
Yes.
it's a nice conversational way. I wish that we learned that in second grade because I made tons of mistakes with that. I think naturally, I'm Sicilian, so I'm a bit of a velvet hammer. And then I read all these like leadership books that told you have to sandwich things then no one knew what I was talking about. So I realize I have to be myself, but I have to speak to people in a way that resonates with them. And I have to hire people that I can trust will take the vision and run with it. And if you have a question, come and ask. Like, I'm not going to keep checking in with you. Just come ask if you have a question.
Yeah, I interviewed a guy called Ray Mullins who came on this podcast, and he shared something I thought was amazing, which is he said, "I trust every member of my staff." He said, "What happens in leadership is that we treat everybody with suspicion." And he said that what I do is I trust everybody, and I tell them that.
That is the same. I'm the same way with clients. I won't take on clients unless I trust that we can grow a good relationship.
Hmm.
Every member of my team I trust.
Hmm.
If I didn't, I can't work with them.
Yeah. And telling people, look, I trust you.
Yeah,
You know, if
absolutely.
someone says, I'm thinking of doing this, well, fine, we'll go and do it. But I trust
Yeah.
you. I trust you do. And if they do it wrong, well, fine. You've learned something.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably could be better about saying it more often.
I think we
Like,
could probably all be
yeah,
better
it's like
at
the intention.
saying,
I love that. Well, yeah.
saying these things, you know, and I think it's so important that because otherwise, you know, we just assume that people think, and actually they're sitting there going, he hates me.
Right.
I don't, but you know.
You love them all. But saying, yeah, I trust you. This, go ahead and show me. Like, I trust you. Another thing I do in this case is if somebody comes to me with, like, if you have a superstar on your team that has like a big idea, I just, because sometimes the creative thinking's all over the place. So to get it in line with strategic thinking, I will often say, that is amazing. Love that idea. As soon as you do X, which is whatever the goal is that they're working on right now, let's talk about that.
Hmm.
That is how you get, catastrophic growth. Because if you have a superstar, you never want to put the lid on them.
Yeah.
You want to encourage. So, but you have to also be strategic with how the creativity is all over the place. Because if there's a goal in place that they've been working on, you don't want them to run after this new idea that they had in a stroke of genius. So I just encourage and say, as soon as you do X, let's do that.
I agree. And I think that there's what we should do is learn from improv comedy, which is where, you don't say no, you say yes.
Yes.
And I think that, whenever anybody comes to me with ideas, it's about, I had someone come to me with an amazing idea today, but not quite formed, because someone had sold them an idea and this thing, because they're trying to sell him something. It's like, okay, well, yeah, let's put that to one side. But what the overall arching thing that they've been talking about is actually really interesting. But have you, yes, and this, or yes, and that, and developing that idea, and in effect, getting them to come up with a solution as well.
Absolutely. Yes.
So your number 3 is strategic thinking, isn't it?
Yes.
So talk us about that.
So when, like, I would look at it like this, like, when you have all these ideas floating around, there's still a moment in time, like, yes, we can have it all and do this and do that. Now, what's the first action we're going to take to start executing a strategy? The thing with any strategic thinking is that what you initially set as your intention, it might not look like that in the end, but you need to put sort of like a little container around it to start moving in the direction of strategy. That's how I look at it. When you say A, B, C, D, E, F, like, that can be overwhelming. So we always try to put things in a container that's like, okay, what are the 3 most likely ways strategically that we can hit this? And let's start moving in that direction. As we move in that direction, a better strategy reveals itself, where we have to go like this. But if we didn't start with the strategy to start with, we could just stay here spinning our wheels and not getting any action accomplished.
I agree, and I think that the ability to be able to switch from tactics to strategy is something that certainly, we need to have as leaders. It's too easy to get carried away with the detail, because that may be where we feel comfortable. And also with strategy is that we have to make decisions, and sometimes they may not be popular.
Right.
But leadership isn't a popularity contest. It's actually making sure that we go where we want to go. And that's meant that, for us, we've turned down business. We said, no, we don't want to do this because it's and turned down the money, and because this is not strategically where we want to go. And while we would like the money, it's a distraction.
Yeah, like if it takes you too off course from your overall vision and mission, that I think sometimes we get offered those golden carrots, like, oh, but it's not, if it's not about the money, it's about the bigger purpose, then we can say yes to what is great by saying no to what's good.
Yes, yes, and sometimes we make decisions, actually good. I'm trying to think. There's a book, can't remember her name, who wrote it, called Thinking in Bets, which
Oh,
is written by somebody who is a world champion poker player. And she says that I think she only plays 40% of the hands that she's dealt. And she always describes and says that you can make good decisions, but they have bad outcomes. Just
oh,
because you
that's
make a
good.
good
Yeah.
decision, just because it has a bad outcome, doesn't mean it was a bad decision. It could
Yeah.
still be and bad decisions can have good outcomes. And I think that's a great learning from a leadership perspective, that just because something went wrong, it's just like, oh, we just made the wrong decision. No, you probably made the right decision. It was just a bad outcome.
Yeah. And the thing is that you just keep moving along, right?
Yes.
It's like you can be mad at yourself for 24 hours. I think it's John C. Maxwell that I learned that from. You can be mad at yourself for 24 hours and that's it. The next,
Yeah.
it's a new day, new decision, new, and we just move on to the next thing, because that's how we don't wallow in, okay, maybe it didn't feel like the best decision today, but over time it always reveals itself that it really was a good decision, because the next thing will be available to you.
Yeah. So your next one is really interesting, which is about financial management, because it's probably the one that most people run away from.
Yeah, because, well, you talked about the two different sides of the brain. And I find that most entrepreneurs are creative. And if they're overly creative, they have to put someone on their team that's strategic. Or over time, they learn to be both. But both need to exist in your high level, in your high level decision making. In the financial management piece, it's like, here in the US, I think the Small Business Association states that 89% of businesses that close, like at the 5-year mark, close because of cash flow.
Yeah.
And so that's not that, sometimes that's like you're doing great business, but maybe you have too many things out in the world where not enough cash coming in. So that's where you can't only focus on sales, sales, sales. You have to still have a financial strategy so that you can reserve some of your cash, or you're very clear on, I'm investing this much because I'm going to have these tangible assets. And then what I'm going to get along the way is actually going to save me time and catapult me here. So the financial piece, I like to look at it from a strategy standpoint, and then refer people to the brains that are the most brilliant in the financial space. But you have to know enough about managing your cash flow and what that looks like, so that you can always come from a place of being strategic and confident with what business you say yes to and what you say no to.
100%. I mean, we have a cash flow spreadsheet in our business, and that's about understanding where the cash is, where the cash is coming in, where the cash is going out, the taxes that we're going to have to pay, etc., etc. And we have that clarity going 6 months forward.
Yeah.
And it can be very sobering, when it starts turning red. But the fact of the matter is that you can see where the cash is going and what's happening.
Did you read? I love the book Profit First by Michael Michalowicz. I think it's called Profit First by Michael Michalowicz, or Mike Michalowicz. And he puts it in perspective, pay yourself first, put money aside, and just simplifying it, especially for people who have been afraid to tap into that financial piece. But it is definitely a must have if you want to be successful in business.
And your last one, I think, is really interesting, because I really agree with your last one, which I think sometimes people miss.
Yeah, like
Explain.
So the fifth one of the must-haves is who you surround yourself, who's in your circle. And this is like twofold, threefold in tiers. It's who you surround yourself with at the high level. Like when you're just starting your business, who are you talking to help elevate the idea next level that you can execute it and bring it out into the world? If you have a team that, when you're talking to your team, who you're surrounding yourself, do you have all the people in the right, seats on the bus? Do you have all the people in your boat that are necessary if there's a crisis? While that's happening, do you still have people in your network that are going to encourage you when things go a little bit of a U-turn or go a little south? You want to just start making sure you're surrounding yourself with people that will add value. And I mean, it's the saying, and people think it, but it so sticks with me. It's like your network always will equal your net worth.
Yeah.
So if you want to level up, surround yourself with people that are doing more than you.
Yeah, it's what I used to play badminton when I was a teenager, and I loved playing against people who were not as good as me because I won. But what I realized was that actually, when I played against people and who were better than me, and I lost, my game got better.
Yeah, you learn, right?
And you learn, and actually having people, and actually not being the cleverest person in the room is actually a good thing. I totally agree with you. You need to be constantly growing your network.
Yeah.
And it's not who you know, or it's not what you know. It's who knows what you know.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
It's my final slide on my presentation on Thursday. So, but yeah, having a network is critical, and the best time to start building one, but if you're watching this, is today.
And Tim, I'm so grateful that we're now in each other's network. Look at that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah, like
And
this.
we know each other, and we know what we do, and stuff, and that's good stuff.
Yeah. It's so good because I could talk to you about this all day. So, it's like one of those things. Like I just get so passionate about helping people achieve the success that they really have been dreaming of in their business. And it's just these 5 things: repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
So, Tracy, where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. You and I should hang out more there. And you can also find me on my website, tracywattscirino.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on. And I think there's 5 key things that we should all know about from a business perspective, and constantly learning about as well, because we can never stand still, can we?
No, absolutely not.
Tracy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. It's been excellent.
Well, I